In any good form of performance, film, or interactive artistic medium, music is always one of the most important aspects. In university, I once wrote a paper on how silent films are actually the noisiest films you can watch, given that they're the only ones that supplement the picture with a continuous ongoing backing track from start to finish. And for all of us living presently, it's pretty much impossible not to have come across a piece of media that implemented a musical theme or motif that you wouldn't be able to forget for the rest of your life. Kondo Koji's original Super Mario Bros. Theme, any one of John Williams' film score themes, hell, pretty much any musical piece written by Mozart or Beethoven, and more than likely a piece or two from Tchaikovsky's ballet scores, to name a few. It might sound like a crazy exaggeration to include a regular TV anime composer up there with some of history's all-time greats, and yet when you strike gold with the right composer for the right project, it doesn't matter what the medium is. And for that reason alone, it's pretty hilarious to think that undoubtedly one of anime's greatest soundtracks of all time is for what is essentially just another trashy harem show. Kami no Mizo Shiru Sekai, or The World God Only Knows, is one of the first shows I ever watched back when I started actively watching anime in 2013, and at a time when I was just switching my major from business to music composition, I couldn't help but be fascinated and highly influenced by the sounds I was hearing. It was like film music, but not. Like theater music, but not. Like dance music, but, well, you get the idea. In fact, the best comparison I could make for it was that it was like cinematic game music. A highly fitting comparison given that the show's protagonist Keima essentially turns his ridiculous task into an even more ridiculous game scenario. And yet, with all the elements of it being just your average shitty harem, the actual development of the story and comedic timing boosted it up from eh to yeah, and the music just took it to a whole other level. The show's composer, Matsuo Hayato, is inarguably one of Japan's top arrangers and orchestrators, likely due in part to the fact that he's the protege of legendary Sugiyama Koichi of Dragon Quest fame. When it comes to his own composition, Matsuo has this inherent ability to write music that just sounds correct regardless of whether it's necessarily fitting for the work it's being made for. The perfect example being Kaminomi. Ignoring the third season for a moment, you wouldn't be wrong for finding the idea of lush orchestrations and developmental musical motifs weird in a rom-com show about a gamer forced to make girls fall in love with him. On paper, it certainly sounds like overkill, and yet when you see the finished product, it manages to flip the atmosphere from something trashy to something compelling and pretty incredible. In simple terms, the main reason the soundtrack is so memorable is due to Matsuo's use of musical motifs and the way that he develops them. A musical motif is a short, easily recognizable phrase that acts as a cue for certain characters or events. If I show you this picture, you'll immediately think of the two-note musical motif that makes up the main theme of the movie, which doubles as the theme of the shark itself. Of course, Matsuo's motifs and themes aren't as simple as the one in Jaws, but they're easily as recognizable while watching the show. The first piece in Season 1's soundtrack is the main theme for the series as a whole and wonderfully establishes A. the motif and theme for protagonist Keima's contemplation and planning, B. Elsie's theme, tying in the importance of her character to the integrity of the story, and C. the motif and theme for the heroine's romance. This piece is basically used in its entirety every time Keima is about to conquer his current heroine, outlining his manipulation of the given situation with the contemplative 3-note 7th chord motif in B minor. This section leads into Elsie's theme, highlighting her presence as she waits to capture each spirit with her theme's clumsy but flowing melody in E-flat major and F major. and finally enters the climax as the feelings of love that the heroine experiences when she and Keima share a kiss rises out of Elsie's F major into an E flat major that reharmonizes the similar figure of the contemplation motif and embellishes it into something lighthearted and affectionate. For reference, the contemplation theme now playing and its numerous variations sound like this. While the love theme and variations, typically for the heroine's own contemplation on her feelings for Keima, sound pretty much the same as the main theme without all the orchestral embellishments. But of course, the reason we're all watching the show isn't for the general atmosphere of the setting and themes, though they do manage to pull you in with that too. We're here for the high school anime waifus, and anyone who says otherwise is just a bad liar. Where Matsuo's music really shines is with the character themes and how he represents them with the music. I mean, obviously the show's less character-centric themes are also really strong, but from what I've found, anime soundtracks really don't tend to feature actual character themes as often as games or live-action films do. Which is a shame because when they're done right, they absolutely slap. Most likely due to the structure of the story being set up like one big game, the director and producers figured that having Matsuo write character music in a similar way that games do would be the perfect match for the anime, and it works so well. Every heroine, except for one, more on that in a bit, has a theme with at least one variation that either expresses the dichotomy of their personality and actions, or is meant to develop with them as a character. For the former, let's take a listen to Shinomiya Shiori's theme. Without knowing the character of Shiori, but having the track's title in mind, we quickly and easily get a sense of what the character is supposed to be like. A quiet bookworm that probably feels uneasy about something or other. Shiori's issue isn't necessarily that she can't talk, but that she feels far more comfortable engaging with books than people, but the necessity of engaging with other people forces her to feel anxious about saying the right things. The sparseness of the arrangement and long chords in the lower register make the space feel empty, like how a drop of water in a cave highlights the silence and emptiness of the setting. After you've heard the theme a couple of times in context with Shiori's presence, the three-note motif that defines her theme becomes instantly recognizable whenever it's heard. And it's in its simplicity that Matsuo is able to build on it so much to form some wild variations, like this one. Hardly the sparse, melancholic theme we heard a moment ago, right? We've suddenly delved right into the quiet bookworm's head as she thinks about the wonders of all the books in the library and how she's read every single one of them. Nerd. Aside from the time signature change to 3/4 and the new sections of music, the motif from before and its formation of the theme's first section are essentially the same. And yet the new harmonies and driving bass line give it an entirely different feel. It's obvious that it's still Shiori's theme, and yet it seems strange that such a drastically different arrangement can still be associated with the character we've come to know as the girl who's shy beyond belief. I mean, it's not like there's some kind of cutesy version of Darth Vader's theme that... Oh. Well, okay then. Another theme that outlines the character's dichotomy but takes it a step further in musical development is Kusunoki Kasuga's theme in Season 2. Kusunoki is a martial artist set to take over her family's dojo and inherit the fighting style. And thus, her theme is imposing and powerful, making itself heard loud and clear with the opening horns and timpani before driving home the main 5-note motif. It's quite clear that the driving bass notes and horns playing in unison with the higher strings are meant to demonstrate Kusunoki's strength, and this is furthered by a very unique version of her theme. To emphasize the long-lasting tradition of her martial arts style and the discipline it takes to maintain it as the sole heir, Matsuo composed a piece of gagaku, traditional Japanese court music, and arranged it based around her theme's main motif. Now, it isn't immediately obvious that this is meant to be a version of her theme as well, at least not until the 5-note motif comes in near the end, but you can hear it hinted at in the shakuhachi playing over the sho and daraiko before the hichiriki pierces through midway. As with Shiori, however, Kusunoki has a hidden side that she has trouble showing, and this is her feminine side, the part of her that wants to be girly and partake in fun, cute things the way her peers do. Forced to always put on a tough front, the spirit residing in her heart takes on a personified form of her femininity, and it is here when we get to hear a drastic change in her theme. I mean, wow, what a change from the powerful driving force that was her regular theme. The recorder gives off a sort of childish vibe, while the accompanying harp, marimba, glockenspiel, plucked strings, melodica, and triangle have this sort of Alice in Wonderland effect that fits nicely with the side of Kusunoki that simply wants to give up training to be a normal girl with normal interests and hobbies. The 3/4 pattern drives the piece along in a more floaty manner than the powerful bass shots in the regular theme, and personally, I can't help bobbing back and forth every time the strong beat comes back in. This time signature forces the rhythm of the motif to change a bit, but it's obviously still her theme, creating yet another curious case in which the piece feels nothing like the original, while still maintaining the obvious fact that it's just a drastically different variation. And now that we've heard all three of these versions of Kusunoki's theme, you might assume that would be the end of it, but no, there's still one more. This track is basically an accumulation of all three we've heard before. The timpani and horns from the regular theme backing the original Kusunoki, the recorder and marimba backing the feminine Kusunoki, and the shakuhachi showing just how the two versions of her are able to battle against each other head to head. It's such a strange clash of different instruments and styles, yet because we've already established the themes in our head, it's as simple as hearing that 5-note motif to make us realize, ah yes, this is what her battle should sound like. This gives a pretty good idea of how Matsuo uses his arranging skills to represent the dichotomy of each heroine's character, and also how he develops the music to match what occurs with their progression. But you'll find that not only is his ability to develop a single heroine's themes to be clever, but how he develops the theme for characters that have some sort of relation to each other non-romantically, the main example being Hakwa and Elsie's themes. Now, Hakwa technically counts as a heroine despite not being the same as the rest of the girls in the show, so it makes sense that she has a few different versions of her theme to express her ongoing internal conflict. But Elsie's theme, despite also having multiple versions, always sounds more or less the same, as she isn't a heroine and doesn't exactly develop as a character the same way that the others do. Or really at all if I'm being honest, but that's okay because she's kawaii as hell and I love her for it. It isn't about how their individual themes develop, however, so much as it is how their themes relate to each other's. Elsie's theme begins with a clumsy-sounding series of perfect fourths descending in whole tones, perfectly characteristic of how the clumsy demon floats down from the sky in a bumbling, airheaded manner. Hakwa's theme also begins with a similar descending figure, however, the use of major thirds both falling and rising before dropping down to the low B-flat trill gives it a slightly more structured feel than Elsie's wonky fall from the sky. Both then move into the A section of the themes played by the strings, yet Elsie's relies more on syncopated supporting rhythms to represent the fact that despite being a member of the collection team, she's still a little offbeat. Hakwa, being the district chief and top of the Demon Academy's class, has a much more structured supporting rhythm, with the bass notes pounding away on the strong first and third beats, occasionally using the fourth to drive along the melody even more so. Both themes then begin the B section, Elsie's taking on a highly romantic melody accompanied by less syncopated rhythms in the supporting homophony, while Hakwa's, also containing a romantic melody, becomes much more polyphonic, giving separate melody lines to the violins, cellos, and piano as a representation of the complex nature of her character formed from all sorts of accomplishments and doubts. While Hakwa's theme stays relatively simple in its supporting rhythms, this is where the slightly more complex nature of Elsie's continues throughout her theme while also occasionally interrupting itself with plucked staccato sections that contrast dramatically with the flowing melody of the strings. She's just too clumsy and adorable, and the music really speaks to that part of her character. Matsuo may as well have written in a fire truck siren as a little Easter egg of sorts.
今の時代はこんなものが闊歩しているんですね。消防車が来たぞ。消防車だ。
On paper, an explanation of these two themes makes them sound very different, and yet the actual performance and music make it much more obvious that there is a clear link between the two. The introductory figures leading into the string-heavy melodies filled with trills in the supporting instrument parts closely connect the little floating demons and their clumsy yet well-meaning demeanors. There is one heroine that technically doesn't have a theme written for her, Nakagawa Kanon, and this is basically because her character is an idol, so we the audience are simply meant to assume that all of the songs she sings herself are her themes. I mean, that's fair enough, they're catchy J-pop tunes that are easy enough to jam along to, but there's something about each character actually having their own theme that kind of makes Kanon's situation a little disappointing. That being said, I don't really have a lot to say about her music, so as always, thanks for watching, and if you'd like to support the channel... Ha! You thought it was over? No, there's still one whole crazy musical part of the series' soundtrack that I haven't even touched yet. For the most part, you've sort of gotten an idea of how the music sounds and relates to the characters and their situations, and that's all well and good. For the first 2 seasons at least. But everything from the first 2 seasons follows a fairly similar pattern until the Tendi arc in the OVAs following season 2. And once the story and music hit that section, there's no turning back. But rather than stretch this video out any more than I need to, here's a little preview of some of the vastly different music I'll be covering in the next part, where we delve into the even more intensely developed themes from the Goddesses arc. I'm honestly super excited to get into the music for the 3rd season and OVAs because as you just heard from those clips, the atmosphere is super different from anything we've heard already, and it's represented so well in the music. There are also a ton of character themes to delve into next time as well, so be prepared to take notes as I start taking each one apart to show you what's so great about each one, and how they all develop from their first instance to their final one. And as always, for real this time, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're as excited to cover the music of the Goddesses arc as I am, then consider supporting the channel over on my Patreon so that I can continue to analyze amazing music in all your favorite weeb franchises. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.